Okay. Sorry about that. I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, you're good, Vianny. Thanks.
So from the previous, I think I was on this slide, and like I said, developing this portal was basically dependent on local skill and local talent. Laban will take you through the application of the portal, but I think it is important that you know what our portal is able to deliver at the moment. So right now we can easily guide on prioritization of the critical habitats for site-based conservation. For the first time, and this may sound as a joke, but it's not. For the first time, we now know the approximate number of fish species in Uganda. Before our project or before our intervention, you could ask someone how many species we have in Uganda, and basically they could say, okay, we have about something, and you could really see that everything was based on guesswork. But now, with this portal and the information that is in the portal, you can say with certainty that at least we have so many fish species. And I'm also happy to say that from this data that we have put in the portal, we have been able to develop a conservation priority index, which can rank water bodies in Uganda that need urgent intervention to restore biodiversity. Of course, previously such analysis was not possible. And the other thing is on the threatened fish species. So now we know where the threatened fish species are and the actions that are actually needed. Of course, with our work, we can also guide on potential ecological impact with respect to water resources development. Now, these two maps show the distribution of fish species in Uganda and their conservation status, of course, according to the different IUCN red list categories, in relation to infrastructure development projects. On the left, we have hydropower dams on the major rivers in Uganda, which are shown by the red stars, and then the distribution of fishes in different red list categories. On the right, we have cage aquaculture installations in Uganda's major water bodies. Of course, it is shown by red dots. Then plus the distribution of fishes in different red list categories. So with this information, now it is possible to conduct evidence-based environmental impact assessment for projects, even with minimal resources, which was not possible in the past. So if there is any project, for instance, that is proposed along the major freshwater systems, we can easily show or we can easily guide the decision makers and on how to proceed with regard to freshwater biodiversity. So this one is now possible because of our intervention at NAFIRI, of course, from GBIF and GRS funded projects. Then let's look at red list assessments as a tool that guides conservation of threatened species. I will start with the national red listing as a tool for conservation planning. And of course, one may ask why we are interested in national red list when we have global assessment. But we all know that conservation is more effective at local scale. And by the way, species may be least concerned at global scale when they are actually at the verge of extinction locally. So that's why national red listing is important. And around 2016, let me give you a bit of background and context to this work. A team of scientists in Uganda developed a national red list. But the national red list they developed was for birds, plants, mammals, dragonflies, of course, and butterflies, reptiles, and amphibians. And as you can see, all these are basically terrestrial taxa. And when you look at fish and other aquatic-based taxa, those groups are missing in the national red list. And of course, the reason is clear. Whoever was doing the national red list for fish lacked data because the data was nowhere to be seen. But now it is possible actually to do the national red list. In fact, I think at the beginning of this month, GBIF awarded us a grant of about 60,000 euros to develop information products. From this data that we have mobilized, with that grant, we should be able to develop information products that can guide policy. And one of the products we are going to develop under this grant is taking this data and developing a first national red list for fish. Okay, so now let's look at the global assessment. Of course, most of the freshwater species in Uganda are listed as data deficient in the IUCN Global Red List platform. And we are currently updating these assessments. And our target is to update red list status for about 150 species. We have so far completed 40 fish species and about 30 invertebrate species. We still have about 70 species to update, but that is work in progress. And of course, these red list assessments are important in identifying trigger species for mapping key biodiversity areas. And by the way, the reason our work on key biodiversity areas has delayed is because we didn't have these assessments. So we needed these assessments to identify the trigger species in order to map the key biodiversity areas. And so that's why work on key biodiversity areas has delayed somehow. Like I said at the beginning, Uganda has about 28 protected areas, but none is primarily gazetted to protect aquatic biota. Of course, what I know is that incidental protection only occurs in lakes that maybe occur. I mean, that lie in sparse protected areas, which include Ramsar sites. But of course, these sites constitute less than 3% of the total area covered by freshwater systems in Uganda. And one of the ways we can protect these areas is by identifying the KBAs. So this work is actually a follow-up to the IUCN work in 2018 that identified 9 freshwater KBAs for Lake Victoria Basin. So now we shall use the data we have mobilized under the JRS project to build on the work of IUCN to actually extend these freshwater key biodiversity areas for the entire country. And this is the work that will be done when released assessments have been completed. Okay. The other thing, of course, from the work we have done is that we can easily identify areas in critical need of baseline information and monitoring, especially when resources are limiting. And of course, that is not news when it comes to countries like Uganda. We don't have all the necessary resources to do monitoring. But now, with this information, we can actually prioritize on which systems to collect baseline data. And what this map shows, this is a map extracted from our portal. It shows all the occurrence data for fishes of Uganda that have so far been included in the portal. And of course, if you are familiar with Uganda and the freshwater systems in Uganda, you can see that data are only available to large water bodies, like Victoria, Lake Choga here in the middle, then Lake Albert in the western part, and then a bit of River Nile, and then Lake Edward in southwestern Uganda here, and Lake George, then plus a few crater lakes in central Uganda. One quick observation is one can make from this map is that we are basically focusing on large water bodies, and less attention is given to small systems, which are relatively more diverse given the area they occupy. And these systems are even the most threatened, of course, according to the study we have done at Nafiri. So actually this work is now important because we know where we need data most. And those areas, of course, include rivers, swamps, and streams, and wetlands. And with this information now, we are able to show people who hold the money that we need to collect baseline data. And of course, we have had some positive developments out of this map. And I think soon we shall be able to get resources to collect baseline data from the less monitored or surveyed systems. Okay. So again, one of the features that are evolving in our data portal is the atlas, and the application of this atlas is huge, because we have, it's a fact that we have so many stakeholders, including researchers, lecturers, environmental practitioners, and even the students who are not able to identify all these fishes in the field. And that is not their fault. It is actually my fault not to create a tool that can enable these stakeholders to work better. So you can imagine with all these 500 fish species in Uganda, the pain that students go through when they are in the field. So we created this platform as a solution for students, researchers, and environmental practitioners who cannot identify the fish in the field. So we have a pictorial guide, identification guide for most of the fishes in Uganda, and it is also incorporated in the portal. Of course, Laban will talk more about that. Then of course, our work is also directly supporting other government agencies in natural resource management to achieve their mandate. And one of them is the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan that has time-phase targets. And one of those targets is to ensure that basic taxonomic information on biodiversity is packaged in user-friendly formats and widely disseminated. So essentially, with the work we are doing under JRS, we are responding to government calls and the strategic plans to make sure that this data is in formats that are easily accessible and usable to the public. So now I will take you through the experiences and lessons we have learned from open access data interventions at Nafiri. So our JRS intervention at Nafiri is actually not the first one. JRS sometime back funded a project, a regional project that was implemented by institutions in East Africa, including Nafiri. But that project was not successful. And those are the hard questions we had to answer when we requested for a grant from JRS, because for us, we were somehow starting from a negative kind of background and history. But we were able to explain things that happened in the past that would not affect our project. And one of those issues was the perception about open data sharing. And that is the first thing we had to tackle in this project. First, to engage the different data holders that, in fact, they can retain data ownership even when data is publicly shared, and also the acknowledgement part of it. People want to be acknowledged for the data they collect, and maybe these are some of the things that were missing in the previous intervention. And of course, the other thing was that the previous intervention didn't consider working with the locally available skills and IT software developers. And of course, harnessing the skills that were not in the institutions at the time. Just like for us, of course, we didn't have enough sufficient capacity to do the portal. So what we did, we collaborated with an institution, with a firm or an organization that had skills and could transfer the skills to Nafiri. And of course, there was limited training of data mobilizers, and even the motivation for data mobilizers was not that sufficient. We know that data mobilization is labor intensive. So motivation actually goes beyond acknowledgement to things like even payments, as we shall see in the next slides. So engaging and changing the perception of primary data holders was our first step, because we noted that that was a key ingredient to the successful data mobilization project and sharing. And of course, some of the other ingredients is if you want to be successful in a data mobilization grant, like those ones funded by JRS, I think it is important to start from small, then you move to a big intervention. What helped us is that first we started with a small grant from GBIF, and that grant laid a good foundation for a bigger grant, because we knew exactly what to do. when it comes to data mobilization. And we knew all the capacity gaps that we had, and we knew how we were able to address those capacity gaps in order to proceed. So I think it is important to start from a small intervention to a big, then to a big intervention. And just like I said, you have to motivate the people who are mobilizing the data beyond acknowledgement. And for our project, this constitutes a big monthly bill. We have to pay people who are actually digitizing the data, and those people have to be paid. If you don't pay them, then basically you will not achieve much. Of course, I'm cognizant of the aspect of sustainability, but I think the most important thing is to have data first, and then of course you can devise means of sustaining the effort afterwards. So I will go through these slides very fast in the interest of time. And then the mismatch in IT capabilities. I said at the beginning, we focused on using locally available skills when it comes to programming, because we have seen portals in Africa which have been developed and have not moved beyond the project funding. And one of the reasons could be institutions hire expertise, maybe from abroad, and then once the project funding has ended, then it ends there. So for us, what we did was to focus on using locally available skills, and of course, intensify training at our institute. Then, of course, we also have institutional or organizational challenges. Of course, you are putting data to the public, and some of this data, of course, part of this data, you may not have collected it yourself. And that process may require some MOUs or memorandum of understanding with the data holders. And what we have noted is that MOU process can be slow, and especially with government agencies. And for the case of Uganda, of course, we have an Information Access Act, and developing these MOUs is not straightforward because the institutions are skeptical due to the existence of that act. But we continue to engage the different stakeholders and the different data holders. For now, we have MOUs with most of the data holders, and I think if we are to implement another project of similar magnitude or similar nature, we shall not waste a lot of time with these MOUs, because now at least we have a foundation, and these MOUs are important when it comes to these data and open data access projects. I have talked about capacity building, and one of the reasons NAFIRI or any Ugandan institution was lacking in GBIF before 2017 was lack of capacity in data mobilization, data digitization, data quality standards, and what we did, of course, we participated in capacity building informatics, and in capacity building in informatics, those sessions were organized by GBIF, and then we transferred knowledge to the local stakeholders or data holders, and we continued with a mentorship of those people. And actually, most of the data that has been published by NAFIRI have been published by people who have collected that data themselves, and that has actually worked for us, because then they retain ownership and they feel that they own the data. So it is also important to identify who the stakeholders are and who you are mobilizing the data for. So for us, right from the beginning, we worked with the National Environment Management Authority, and of course, this photo shows one of the expert group meetings for one of the projects in Uganda that are aimed at mainstreaming biodiversity information at the heart of government decision making. So this is Laban on the extreme and on the right of this photo. He's actually one of the technical personnel in that Connect project. Then we have also learned that publishing data or mobilizing data and publishing it on GBIF is not the end. Because then if you can't transform that data into biodiversity information and knowledge, then it will not be useful. So like I said, we have actually secured a grant to now move this data, this enormous amount of data that we have mobilized to develop information products, which can be directly used by policymakers. And we have also learned that data mobilization is labor intensive. So you actually need to work with data users, which saves time, because then that helps to prioritize areas or data variables that are needed by the stakeholders, instead of working alone. And then in the end, when you are going to the stakeholders, basically you are missing all the most important variables. So it is important actually to start working with the data users right from the beginning. And that's what we have been able to do. And maybe that's why our JRS project is one of those projects that are actually on track for success. Okay. And then of course there are other issues of citizen science, which is not, we don't have, we didn't have prior experience with citizen science at NAFE, but what we are planning is to incorporate it in the data portal we have developed as one way where users can contribute data. But this is something that is just starting, and I can't say much about it because we are just planning to incorporate citizen science in the work we are doing. So this is my last slide, and I will talk about where we want to see our work in the future. One, we want our portal to be a self-sufficient biodiversity advisor. And I think this will be achieved by developing information products which are tailored for conservation planning and management. And of course, we are alive to the fact that most of our data users are not experts on freshwater biodiversity, and that's what most people forget. That we are creating these information products for people who are not experts. So we want to include products in our information system that can help even those people who are not experts to access biodiversity information. And we have already done some kind of user needs assessment, and we know already that our data users prefer information products showing temporal and spatial trends, and we shall be working on that in the next intervention. Of course, now some of these preferences are limited in the portal, but we are doing everything possible to incorporate these products, and we have so far only included in the portal information on fish for a few systems for which we have the data, and our goal in the future is to have information on other taxa and list studied systems. And of course, this will require additional funding and collaboration. And of course, I'm looking forward to working with you all in this endeavor.